Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is a revenge story about OP taking a stance and getting his life back together after his wife forgot their 10-year anniversary and cheated on him. Now OP is living his best life, and his wife's life is a wreck. Let's get into today's story to find out what happened. I'll call her my wife, just to reflect our status at the time. We had been together for 10 years and were about 15 days from celebrating 2 years of marriage. No kids. The house's lease was in her name, and we were in a totally dead bedroom for 9 months after about 3 months of declining sexual activity. When it happened, it was the stereotypical starfish duty sex. In those 9 months, she also denied me any form of affection, hugs, rubs, touches, kisses, whatever you could think of, she denied. She claimed it was her way of making me work on writing my PhD thesis. I admit I needed an incentive to write it. I had switched careers after finishing the research part and was no longer motivated to finish it, so I fell for that abuse disguised as a good thing. I tried to push through, and every free moment I got I spent in front of my computer trying to finish the thesis, while she spent her time watching TV, scrolling through social media, or texting and calling her friends. We practically had no time together as a couple anymore. After about 3 months of this, I buckled and couldn't handle the pressure of being stuck in the thesis and the lack of affection and rejection whenever I tried to get a simple hug. I was begging for affection and was always being rejected. That is soul-crushing, and my mind started to wander to suicidal thoughts. Every time I was alone and not working on my day job, I ended up thinking of ways to end my life, evaluating the pros and cons of every way I could think of until eventually I decided on one method. Then I started to think about what messages I would leave behind and to whom. When I decided what message I would leave for my sister, I had a moment of clarity and realized what I was doing and had the strength to stop it by removing what I thought was causing my suffering. I decided not to continue trying to write the thesis, and a few weeks later I stopped begging for affection. It worked. The suicidal thoughts stopped. However, we were now roommates, not husband and wife anymore. She continued to spend her time on the phone texting or calling someone, and even when we were doing something together, which was rare, she would interrupt it to help a coworker with random stuff. Basically, me and our relationship were at the bottom of her priorities. She started to make a habit of answering phone calls and going to the bathroom at a time where in the previous 9 years she would already be asleep. She started to go meet her female friends and coworkers on the weekends to catch up and gossip, which would be boring for me and I wouldn't enjoy it, so she went alone. She arranged dinners followed by extensive talks in the parking lot. That was her reason for arriving in the first hours of the morning. She did this with her coworkers who I didn't know and went without me because I wouldn't fit in or because I was visiting my parents in my hometown. Whenever I complained about those odd behaviors, she always dismissed my concerns and made me think I was crazy. Whenever she needed me, she could be kind, but as soon as she didn't need me anymore, she would go back to mistreating me. The only 2 weeks in those 9 months where she was sweet and fooled me into thinking we were back to normal without sex but with affection was when she asked me to work on a chapter of her PhD thesis. It had to do with programming and she knew nothing about it. As anyone remotely well-balanced can see, I was being used and abused left and right, but I couldn't see it at the time. Even if you pointed out everything wrong about our relationship, I wouldn't recognize it, and if you dared to insinuate she could be cheating on me, I would be really mad at you. I started to open my eyes 1 year ago today. We were on vacation on a beautiful island in the Mediterranean, and I was convinced we were celebrating our 10th anniversary together. Yes, we were in a rough spot. To be fair, our relationship was already dead, but I couldn't see it at the time. But she always made a point to celebrate all the dates, and gift exchange was really important to her. By the way, I'm not that into exchanging gifts and have disappointed her in that department before. For our 10th anniversary, I had bought her something special and never thought she would let it go despite our recent struggles. Well, the day came and I suggested going to dinner at a restaurant instead of eating in our apartment as we had been doing all the previous days. She started berating me, saying it was a dumb thing, and why would we spend money when we could eat perfectly well at our apartment? I told her that that day was a special day, but I didn't tell her it was our 10th anniversary. Apparently, she forgot why that day was special. At the end of the day, I hid her present below her pillow, hoping that when she found it, she would remember what was so special about that day. Well, she found it, but didn't understand why I gave it to her. It was not usual for me to give her gifts out of the blue. Then I realized she had forgotten all about it. It might seem trivial taking into account all the other stuff, but when she forgot about it, I was hurt and broken even more so than I already was until then. But if you asked me at the time, I wouldn't have thought I was broken. We might have had a few little problems, yes, but everyone has them, right? Dumb me talking. On that day, I decided to look for help and I started individual counseling without her knowing to try and solve what I thought was our main problem, our dead bedroom. I was so wrong back then. Looking back, the dead bedroom was the least of our problems, but what's important is that I made that decision and I started individual counseling as soon as we got back from our vacation. In individual counseling, I slowly started to realize all the abusive things I had been put through, but I still wanted to fix things and make us work and go back to being happy like before. The idea of her cheating on me crossed my mind, but I quickly discarded it. There's no way she would do that. We are only in a rough spot. There's a million innocent reasons for her behavior. It took me about 3 months of weekly individual counseling and more episodes of complete disrespect and even boldness, or is it that she got too comfortable to properly hide it? To start to consider cheating as an explanation for her abusive behavior. Do you want some examples? I know you do. She kept her phone to herself, always in her hand or sight with the front facing down, and she took it wherever she went, even in the bathroom. She didn't do any of those things before. Whatever the activity, we were doing together, no sexy things, remembered, dead bedroom. She would stop to answer her coworker and help him during a more stressful and busy period. Today he needs my help. Tomorrow I might need his help. That was her explanation. On my birthday, we went partying at a club. The good old times where there was no COVID-19 with a few of my old, and they also became her friends. She was constantly texting on her phone and even answered a call at around 3 in the morning claiming it was her female friend, fake name, but eventually early in the call I figured out that she had lied and that she was not talking to Emily. Who the hell calls anyone at 3 in the morning, especially a married person? Why would you take that call? Why would you lie about who it was? Why are you talking on the phone for about an hour with this mysterious person at 3 in the morning while we were celebrating my birthday with our friends who we don't get to hang out with much because life happens? I think you all guessed who it was and you are right, but I didn't know at the time and didn't even suspect. I just thought it was one more disrespectful thing. On another occasion, we were talking about going to the cinema that Friday night because it was the last opportunity to watch a movie we wanted to see. On that day, she said she was tired and didn't feel like going out. She wanted to stay home and chill on the sofa. I understood that, and it was okay for me, so I also stayed at home. After dinner, she got a call from her male friend from work, the same from the other calls, and agreed to go out and have coffee and gossip about some impending changes in their departments. Not even an hour had passed since she had said she was too tired to go out. I told her I wouldn't stay home while she went off after trashing our plans, and I would go to the cinema and watch a movie anyway. I bet that's not the reaction you were expecting, but believe me, I could have totally stayed at home and not had any fun. That was how I had some of the fun I had planned to have. Who are you? Me from the past. Of course, she immediately changed clothes and got into a beautiful summer dress. Pretty easy to pull up if you get what I mean, and then she went with him. Yes, he picked her up near our building. No, I didn't get to see him. Yes, I was dumb. I was pissed at the disrespect, but then again, cheating was at the bottom of the list of reasons I could think of. I returned home from the movie and she wasn't there. I called, no answer. I called again, still no answer. I sent her a text. She replied saying this is no time for a girl to be out. I'll be home in half an hour. I decided to wait by the window to try and get a glimpse of the car and guy she returned with. She came back about 2.5 hours later. I did get to see the car and I even heard some things she said to him while outside the car, and what I heard immediately reminded me of the way we would say goodbye to each other when we were starting to date. At that point, cheating started to climb positions on the list of reasons for her behavior, yet it was still far from the top. Yes, I was still dumb and blind. On another occasion, I found her laundry. Yes, I'm not proud, but desperation makes you do things you never thought you would. The panties she wore the day and night she went out for coffee or dinner or company party, I don't recall. It had a lot of what I thought was vaginal fluid, and I mean a lot, which was not normal. No one was having that much fun at work or when hanging out with friends. That's when it became clear she was cheating on me. I felt like my heart was pulled out of my chest. I had found the proverbial gun with the bullets, but still in my mind it wasn't a smoking gun. There was still a 1% chance that it wasn't real. She could have been masturbating, right? No need for a third party to intervene. So I decided to try and peek at her phone. It was really hard because in my mind that was an awful thing. If you reached that point, you were done. There would be no trust. There would be nothing left. I even got the chance, but backed down at the last minute. I had a talk with a friend who told me he too was cheated on. He never mentioned it before, and that the behavior of my wife was similar to his cheating girlfriend. That settled it. I finally got the opportunity to peek at her phone, and there it was in all of its glory. Thousands of texts exchanged between her and this coworker who was having a difficult time because his mother had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Another low blow. My grandmother suffered from deep Alzheimer's disease for about 10 years until she passed away, so she knew that was a soft spot for me. It was also full of sexual talk. Pictures in underwear from them both. Everything. They had been at it for at least a year until I found out. 1 damn year. The same time as our dead bedroom and the same duration of her torturing me by denying affection. She not only chose to cheat on me but also to be loyal and faithful to him, as if being with her husband was wrong and a betrayal of the other guy. Well, I was glad she did it. At least I didn't have to battle with the thoughts of having had sex or even touching her before or after he had sex with her. As soon as I found this undeniable evidence, I was crushed, but at that point I was already expecting it and didn't crumble immediately. I decided I would leave her as soon as possible. My situation was the best one could be in when in that situation. No kids, no house owned, and no lease in my name. I could just pack my things and leave as soon as I found a place for myself. I also decided I would not let her know what I had found out, and more importantly, how I found out. So I kept my composure and pretended like nothing happened. I even helped her with her dress, as she was preparing to go to a big party event at her company, and I already knew that was not the main event for that night. He would be there as well, so naturally they would do what adults do. About an hour later she left, and I finally could grieve, cry, yell, get mad, and let all my emotions out. I called my friend, read more of their texts, created this Reddit account, and spent about 4 hours writing my story and posted it on Dead Bedrooms, which I had been following for the previous 6 months, when I thought our problem was just a dead bedroom. I want to thank all the people that supported me at that time and reached out with advice and, more importantly, pointed me to useful resources, such as this community, which I have been following since. Of course, I couldn't sleep, and I stayed up until she arrived home at around 7 in the morning. Of course, she told me her group of friends was the last to leave the party and that it was great. You and I know it was really great. In one of her texts to him later that day, she said to him, "The after party left my thigh bruised because of the handbrake." Almost all cars in my country have handbrakes between the driver's and passenger seat, so it's clear what kind of an after party it was. That happened on the weekend. During the week, I kept playing dumb while I was meeting with lawyers, found a place to live, and arranged for my mail to be forwarded to a new address. All the while she stayed at work late. Another peek of her messages showed that she wasn't working but instead waiting on the other guy for another round of sex. In the previous 2 weeks, they had had sex more times than we had in the previous 18 months of our marriage. Way to go, wife. By Friday, I had everything ready to move. As soon as she went to her job, my family came by and helped pack all of my things and transport it to my new place. At the end of the day, I sent her a message saying, "You know what you have been doing." I left the house and I'm filing for divorce, and immediately blocked her and called her mother to tell her about the divorce. I didn't explain why. I just said her daughter knew what she had been doing and should explain. My wife kept trying to call me without success. She called my mother, but she never answered. In the previous 10 years, she had never called my mother. She even called my friends, but they were already in the loop and never answered her either. She then proceeded to text me via the same app she was using with her affair partner and even accused me of being brainwashed by a former coworker of mine and leaving to go living with her. Ridiculous accusation and a classic example of projection. I blocked her. I only got to talk with her 2 more times. The next Wednesday, I called her to tell her the lawyer had sent a letter with all the information pertaining to the divorce. She tried to play the lost wife card who didn't understand what was happening and why I was doing this. She kept crying, saying she had always fought for us and that I never had, and that she had been thinking that we should go to marriage counseling for some time. I think most of us are familiar with all of this. The thing is, I almost fell for it. After that call, I started to doubt what I knew was undeniably true. Yet my broken and beaten heart started to doubt and wanted to believe in all her crap. Luckily, I had copies of their messages and read some of them to get real. Yes, it was pain shopping, but I needed that to keep myself focused and to not back down. They basically got to know every parking lot suitable for car sex around our house, his house, and their work. They most likely did it in their work office buildings, and the most hurtful revelation was that they regularly did it in our house, in our bed, living room, kitchen, everywhere. The last time I spoke with her was about a month later when we signed the divorce. At that time, she tried to project this cold, distant, and superior persona. At the end, I told her that I knew everything she had done with the affair partner. Her response was something like this: "What I did was only to get a reaction from you." I think she didn't fully understand what I knew. Perhaps she even thought I was just pissed at all the attention, non-sexual, she gave to the other guy. The next weekend, I met with her parents and told them most of what she had put me through and about the affair, although without revealing the messages. Of course, they had a hard time believing their daughter could do such horrible things. Doing so is telling her, "This is how I got you. Next time, be more careful and hide your secret life better." But I didn't show them the evidence. That was the last time I had contact with anyone in her family. How did I deal with all the trauma? I kept going to individual counseling. I still am today. I relied on my friends and family. I never hid her cheating. Doing so would be collaborating. I let my emotions out. Every time I felt like crying, I cried. It came in waves. One moment I was fine, the other I felt the brutal shock of everything once again. Just let it all out. It'll pass and get better. I haven't had one such episode for months, but I know I might have one anytime, and it's okay. I started doing things I felt like doing, mostly going to concerts and watching plays at theaters. Damn COVID-19. Going by myself, without other people. It felt great not to miss out on something you think you might like just because you don't want to go alone and your friends don't feel like going. Go to events even if you don't feel like going. It's an opportunity to meet new people and get yourself out of your bubble. Yes, it won't cure you, but the boost you get from just talking to new people, even if just for a few minutes, is wonderful. Make an effort to interact more with other people. I'm an introvert, so this is a hard and important thing for me to do. The only way to get better at talking and being with and around other people is, well, by doing it. Has it been easy? Hell no. It's a struggle, but with time it gets better. I confess I was doing much better before COVID-19 hit my country and shut everything down. In the past 3 months, I felt like going backwards in my recovery because all things I did to cope with the situation were not available. Concerts and plays were canceled. Parties and events were canceled. Friends and gatherings were forbidden. I moved to my parents' house to be with them when we were ordered to stay at home. Despite being in a really privileged position, sometimes I felt trapped and suffocated without being able to take a walk in a beautiful garden and take a break from the people in my house. We love each other, but we all need our own space. As a consequence, I found myself going back to all the things she did more often, and it has been hard. Thank you all for reading this far. You deserve a medal. I also want to thank everyone who reached out to me in my previous posts and comments. Knowing an internet stranger cares might seem unimportant, but it really can be the difference between being stuck in a miserable mindset and turning yourself around and coming back with renewed strength. I hope my story can help someone. I know it's hard, but it's possible to break all the emotional abuse. You are worth it on your own. You don't need anyone else to tell you that you're worth it. Take back your power and live for yourself. You can do it. Wow, Opie, what a touching story. I'm so glad to hear that you left her and are doing better than you've ever been before. If I were you, I would also tell your in-laws your side of the story, in case your wife tries to hide what actually happened. I'm positive that she would never tell them about how she treated you. It seems the only consequence that your ex had to face was the absence of you in her life. That in itself is a big consequence, but she never felt the shame of having her family know that she destroyed her marriage with an affair. Telling her family will allow that to happen. Best of luck to you, Opie. Keep striving. Thanks for taking the time to listen to today's story. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done so, and comment below on what your thoughts are on today's story. If there's a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. I recently became the victim of my wife's infidelity 2 years ago, and it totally destroyed my family. I'm a 31-year-old male, and my wife is a 27-year-old. For this, I will refer to my wife as Deidre and to myself as Dave. We have 2 kids, a daughter age 4 and a son age 2. I'll call them Sammy and Timmy. We got married nearly 6 years ago. I'm not going to get specific about my line of work, but let's just say I have a good job. My wife and I met in her final semester of college, and we got married 13 months later. She followed me to the East Coast, where I worked for 4 years and where our kids were born. Earlier in the year, I was given a promotional opportunity to run one of our offices located within 15 minutes of both our hometowns. Deidre and I were excited to move back home, especially after having kids, and our parents were overjoyed. Both my parents and her mother still live in the area, as does my younger brother. Deidre's dad passed away before I met her. Our families were of course excited to have the 2 of us back home, but were really excited about being able to see their grandkids on the regular. As things worked out, my mom and dad had recently moved into a new home in a 55-plus community, and were planning to keep our family home and rent it out for income. Our family home is a historic structure and is just a beautiful place, sitting on over 3 acres of land with a small creek flowing through the wooded lot on the back of the property. Instead of buying a house, Deidre and I decided to move into the family home and pay rent to my mom and dad. My parents want to keep the home in the family and pass it down to me and my brother, and they'd like us to do the same. My parents and brother didn't want the rent money, but I insisted since my dad recently retired and was counting on the rent money for income. Paying them rent was like paying myself anyway, since my parents are leaving everything to me and my little brother. Okay, like I said, this house is very special to my family, and my parents treated it with great TLC over the years, but there were a few things that needed done after we moved in. Since it is a historic home, it has unique fixtures and features that require specialization. My parents have been working with a local contracting company for the past 35 years who has done nearly all the major repair work on the house. One of their specialties is working on older homes, and they do a great job. So anyway, after getting a list of projects together, I called them and got an estimate. The owner came out and walked around the house with me. He's a great man and has built a great company. If you look at the reviews for this place online, they've got like an 82% 5-star rating, 16% 4 stars, and that's out of nearly 700 reviews. Most companies like this have review scores that average in the 3 range if they're lucky, so that tells you something about this outfit. A couple weeks after getting the estimate, the company started the repairs. They moved quickly and always had the project area cleaned up at the end of the day. My wife and I were very pleased with their work and professionalism. The work was primarily done by 3 of their craftsmen, but one guy in particular completed most of the projects on our home. Let's call him Brock for this posting. Brock was a very personable and polite guy that was about my age. My daughter referred to Brock as the window man as she saw him through our second-story windows while he was working out on the ladder. All repairs were completed on time, and we were now settled in at the house. My wife and kids loved the place, and I loved my new job. Everything was going well until I had an innocent conversation with my daughter. My wife had gone shopping with her mom and my mom, and I was watching the kids. We were playing out back, and my daughter was running all over the place, and when she got tired, she jumped up on my lap. We were just talking generally, and then, out of the blue, she looked at me and said, "I saw Mommy napping with the window man." Now, before we go any further, let me state my daughter is a highly gifted child. I know all parents feel that way about their kids, but with her is true. She is highly gifted. Everyone who meets her immediately recognizes it. Her doctors recognized it, and we had her tested before we moved, and she scored one of the highest scores the clinic had ever seen for a 4-year-old. So I knew what she was telling me was very likely factual, although there was a possibility this could have been something she made up as she does have a remarkable imagination. I was shocked and asked her to repeat it, and she told me the same thing she just said. I asked her to tell me what happened and how she saw them. She said my wife put Timmy and her down for their afternoon nap. Sammy said Timmy dropped his binky behind his bed and was crying for her to get it, but she couldn't reach it, so she went looking for her mom. I asked her if she called mommy, and she said no. She said she walked over to our bedroom door and opened it and then called mommy. I asked her what she saw, and she said mommy jumped up out of bed with a blanket wrapped around her and ran over and kissed her, and then took her by the hand to get the binky and to tuck them back in. I said, where did you see the window man? She said he was lying on daddy's side of the bed. Hearing this hurt so bad, but I didn't want to show emotion, so I said he was. She said yes. I then asked her what happened next. She said mommy left their bedroom and I heard her talking with the window man, and they went outside. I asked her what she did next. Sammy said she got up and looked out the window and saw him driving his truck down the driveway. I gave her a big kiss and thanked her for telling me. She then said something that really broke me. She said mommy told her to show let's keep this our secret, okay? I asked her what she said back to mommy, and she said I told mommy okay. Again, my little girl was smart, and somehow she sensed what she saw wasn't right. Again, I didn't want her to be upset, so I made light of the situation and said thank you so much for telling me, I'm so proud of you. Now this can be our secret, okay? She said okay, I won't tell mommy I told you. Then she said daddy don't tell mommy I told you, and I told her there's no way this is our secret. I then tickled her to break the mood and we started laughing and talking about something else. I could tell the secret my wife asked her to keep was really upsetting my daughter, and after telling me, I think she felt relieved. My wife came home with our moms in tow, and she summoned me to come inside with her while our moms went out on the back porch to watch Sammy and Timmy. When I got outside, my wife showed me a gift she bought for Sammy. It was a gift Sammy picked out for her birthday, which is not until October. I asked why she bought it now, and she said she wanted to give it to her now. This was surprising as Sammy wasn't asking about this gift and was not expecting it until her birthday. Also, my wife and I have a clear understanding with Sammy of when she will get large gifts. She knows it's only on her birthday and Christmas, and she accepts this, and like I said, she has never mentioned the gift again since she chose it a couple months ago. My wife justified the purchase, saying she's such a great kid and has been so good lately. I wanted to reward her. I hope you're not mad. I told her I wasn't mad, but I immediately sensed this was a bribe of sorts for Sammy to keep my wife's secret. When my wife gave Sammy the gift, Sammy was concerned and said I wasn't supposed to get this until my birthday. What am I going to get then? Deidre told Sammy, you've been such a good girl, mommy and daddy want to give you this now. Sammy surprisingly said no, I want to keep it until my birthday. I don't want it now. My wife kept coaxing her to open it, but Sammy didn't want to and looked at me for backing. I spoke up and told Sammy, let's take this upstairs and put it in your closet. My wife was stunned by Sammy's reaction, but it didn't surprise me. Like I said, she's very smart and she didn't want that gift until her birthday. We took the gift upstairs to her closet and she seemed relieved and not have to open it. When Sammy and I came back downstairs, my dad and brother had arrived, so we spent the rest of the day eating and enjoying family time. I was going through the motions and having fun with my family, but my mind was preoccupied with what Sammy told me. Later that night, I was going to confront my wife, but decided not to since if what Sammy said was true, my wife would likely deny it. Instead, I told my wife I needed to wake up early Sunday morning to do some work for my company using our home computer. She was fine with this and asked if I wanted her to get up with me to keep me company, and I told her no. When I woke up, I did a complete check on our home computer and there was nothing. Then I went on her phone and entered her password, and again nothing. I thought to myself, did Sammy make this whole thing up? She could have, but her details were too descriptive not to be true. The rest of the day we spent over at my parents' visiting with my aunt and uncle who had flown in from out of town. I hadn't seen them in over 2 years, so it was good to visit with them and to introduce them to Timmy, who they had not yet met. We had a great day and everything appeared to be normal with Deidre. She was her ever-loving self and showed no signs of anything. I returned to work on Monday, but the thought of what Sammy told me was still on my mind. So several times during the day I drove over past my home to alleviate my suspicion. I did the same thing on Tuesday and then again on Wednesday. There was nothing, but I just had a strong feeling Sammy was right. I thought of hiring a private investigator, but instead I decided to buy a camera system at Best Buy. I installed the camera system when Deidre and Sammy were out attending an evening event at our local nature center, and I was home watching Timmy. I placed the camera outside near the garage looking down the driveway. A second camera in the living room and the third camera in our master bedroom. I placed each camera where they could not be seen unless your eyes somehow stumbled upon them. I was concerned, however, that my wife may notice the camera in our bedroom. Though it was up on the crown molding and completely blended in, as our crown molding is white with black trim, it was in sight if you were laying on your back looking straight at it. I turned the system on when I left for work every day and turned it off before I arrived home. Since my wife and kids don't spend much time in the living room, our bedroom, or on the driveway during the day, they did not set the cameras off much. When the cameras are triggered, I receive a text alert. Everything was normal until the following Tuesday at 1:46 p.m. when I got an alert from the driveway unit. When I checked, I saw a truck from the contracting company coming up the drive. I then saw Brock get out, walk up to my front door, open it, and go in. I next got an alert from the living room camera, and there I saw my wife kissing Brock. Worst fears confirmed, Sammy was right. With this, I rushed out to my car and started heading toward my house. On the way, I called my mom and told her what was happening and asked her to meet me at my house as soon as possible. My brother, aunt, and uncle were also there, and I told her to bring them. On the way over, I spoke with them on the phone. By this time, I had gotten an alert from the bedroom and knew what was likely happening there. I was really upset but held it together, giving instructions to my family. I told my mom and aunt I wanted them to take the children outside when I confronted Deidre. I then asked my uncle and brother if they could accompany me in my bedroom when I confronted Deidre. I explained I wanted them as witnesses and to prevent me from doing something violent. They readily agreed. We parked on the driveway down from the house, blocking Brock's truck in, and walked up to the front door. The door was unlocked and we all entered the house. Our bedroom is on the back of the house, so there was no chance the cheater saw or heard us approaching. I led the way with my brother and uncle right behind me and my mom and aunt behind him. The noise from the bedroom drowned out any noise we were making walking up the stairs and down the hall to the bedroom. My heart was beating out of my chest at this point. I motioned for my mom and aunt to go past us to the kids' room. I then looked at my uncle and brother and asked if they were ready, and they nodded yes, and with that I opened the door and walked in. My wife screamed, "Oh no. Oh my God," and with that Brock dismounted and fell back on the floor, started apologizing and reaching for his clothes. I had my phone out and was filming and said nothing. I just stood there in silence, moving my phone camera back and forth. Brock continued apologizing and getting dressed while my wife had the sheets pulled up to her face and was crying, saying, "This wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't mean to hurt you, Dave. I love you so much. I'm so sorry." After a couple minutes, Brock was fully dressed and sat on the floor with his hands covering his face and was continuing to apologize while my wife kept crying and apologizing. I told Brock to get the F out and he quickly left. Before leaving, I told him, "Don't think about taking your truck. We have it blocked in, and I will be calling the company to come and pick it up." I then called my mother-in-law and explained to her what just happened and told her to come over and pick up her daughter. My wife was still laying in the bed under the covers, pleading with me not to make her go. I ignored her. My mother-in-law arrived shortly thereafter, and when she did, my uncle, brother, and I left the bedroom. I then heard my mother-in-law yelling at my wife as she sobbed. To my surprise, my wife left the house without incident. When she left, she rushed out with her head down crying and didn't say anything. I think she was in a total state of shock and was also highly embarrassed. My mother-in-law apologized to me, gave me a big hug and kiss, and told me she loved me. After they left, I went out back to see my kids and then called the contracting company. After I explained the reason for my call, they put me through to the owner's cell phone. He apologized profusely and said he would see to it that his company did everything they could to make this up to me. I thanked him and ended the call. About an hour later, the company dropped by with someone to pick up the truck. Brock was nowhere in sight. The following Monday, I took the day off and met with a lawyer to start divorce proceedings. I also secured an attorney from the same firm to handle the situation with the contracting company. While I respect the owner and the company he's built, I want to receive some level of compensation for the damage their employee inflicted on me and my family. From that day, I didn't speak a word to my wife. She's called and texted me nonstop, apologizing, begging forgiveness, and asking me for a second chance, but that's not happening. Against the advice of my attorney, I've moved all my wife's stuff out and had my brother and a friend of his take it to her mother's house. The way I got things working was that my wife and her mom come to my house at 6:30 a.m. Her mom comes in and my wife waits in the car until I leave for the office. Then she goes in. I work until 5 o'clock and then head out to grab dinner at a restaurant and then come home at 6:30 p.m. My wife and her mother have dinner with the kids before I arrive back home. When I'm about 5 minutes out from the house, I call my mother-in-law to advise her. My wife then goes out to the car while her mom stays in the house with the kids. When I arrive, I ignore my wife sitting in the car and go straight in the house. I usually talk to my mother-in-law for a few minutes to recap the day before she leaves. I then spend the next 12 hours with my kids and repeat this cycle 7 days a week. I know this may seem extreme to some, but I wanted nothing to do with my wife. If I could, I would have banned her from ever seeing my kids again, but I know that wasn't happening. I have extreme anger for what she did to me. The fact she had a strange man in my bed while my kids were in the next room, then instructed my daughter to lie for her, that is beyond forgiveness to me. I instructed my lawyer to go for full custody, but she said we would not get it, but we do have a shot of getting 50-50 custody with my home being designated as the child's primary home. My wife continued to have the mindset that she was going to win me back somehow and kept coming up with new things to offer me, thinking that will sway me. She came up with the idea that I could have a one-sided, open relationship with as many partners as I wanted, but she would still remain faithful and would sign a post-nup agreement with those stipulations. She started seeing the therapist 3 times a week and had her mom convinced that she went temporarily insane for a couple weeks, and that was why she cheated. This is a crock of BS. Of course, she knew exactly what she was doing. I've since read that the claim of temporary insanity is a ploy women sometimes use to try to excuse their cheating. I didn't buy any of that, and I didn't speak a word to her. My mother-in-law asked me several times if there was any way I could forgive and reconcile with her daughter. I love my mother-in-law and didn't want to get into a discussion with her, so I just told her that I could not. As for the idea of my wife being sorry, I do believe she was sorry. Sorry for herself, that is, and sorry she got caught. I think in her twisted mind, she thought betting Brock was okay as long as she did not let our relationship suffer. She had the nerve to send me an email explaining how, even during the affair, she always gave me 100% of herself, including 100% of her body. As time went, I remained focused on getting divorced as quickly as possible. She grew more and more desperate as she tried daily to talk to me, but I only communicated via email and only about our children. When she brought the subject of our relationship, I simply replied each time that our marriage was over and that we will only have a co-parenting relationship. Well, fast forward a few months later, and I finally divorced Deidre. The process, however, was much more difficult than anticipated and was filled with drama, which delayed the final proceedings. My mother-in-law told me that she started talking about ending it all and saying if she didn't have me, she wouldn't want to live. My mother-in-law asked if I could speak to her and I resisted, but eventually met with her in the presence of my mother-in-law and my mother. In the meeting, Deidre elaborated on how sorry she was and told me everything she was willing to do for me if I just give her a chance. She kept asking me to just give her 6 months, so she could prove herself. I let her go on until she was talked out, and when she was finished, I told her that I no longer see her as a romantic partner and was not interested in any form of reconciliation, even if it was just for one day. After this meeting, her mom told me she became deeply depressed and stopped going out of the house. In fact, my mother-in-law would come over at 6:30 a.m. when I left for work. She would dress the kids and fix them their breakfast, then take them back to her house to be with Deidre. She said Deidre was withdrawn from them and spent most of the day in her room crying and pining for me. My daughter noticed and asked me why mommy was crying all the time. This was very upsetting to her and to my son Timmy, although he is young enough where he doesn't notice as much. I explained to Sammy that mommy and I are living in separate houses now. I told her that Timmy and I are living in our house and mommy is living with Grammy. After I explained this, she was okay. Her primary fear was that she would be moving to Grammy's house too. She loves her Grammy and her mom, of course, but I think she loves me more. She was worried about moving out of our house and leaving me in her room and the creek where she likes to play. I told her that would never happen. After hearing this, she was fine. The drama with Deidre didn't stop there though. As the date for our final divorce hearing grew closer, Deidre became more desperate and was calling and texting me multiple times per day while I was working, reiterating all the things she will do for me and how I would be the happiest man in the world if I'd stay with her, and she promised me that. I'm paraphrasing now, but you get the picture. Well, the day before the hearing, I got a call from my mother-in-law informing me that Deidre was rushed to the hospital by ambulance. They thought she was having a heart attack. She was admitted and tests were run. In the end, it was determined that she was suffering from severe dehydration. Her mom told me she hadn't eaten anything for the past 3 days, but said she was drinking water. Apparently, she wasn't and got severely dehydrated. I think she did this purposely to delay the final divorce hearing. Well, her shenanigans worked as the hearing was delayed until after the first month of the year, then was delayed again due to weather. Finally, in early March, the hearing took place and I was granted a divorce. Overall, I think I made up pretty well, all things considered. We are in an at-fault state and I have video proof of Deidre's cheating. The videos were not necessary though, as Deidre and her attorney gave a full written confession to the judge. In terms of the division of assets, I ended up keeping nearly 63%, as the judge allowed me to retain everything I brought into the marriage. Even so, Deidre ended up getting $71,000 from me, as well as child support, but no alimony. Like I said, I made out pretty well, but the idea of paying child support to her just burns me. We split custody 50-50, with my home being the primary home. I'm paying my 50% and also paying her 50%. How is this fair? Shouldn't she have to contribute? The court system seems to be totally rigged against fathers. So that's where we are today. We still have the same 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. arrangement 7 days a week, and it's working well, especially for my kids, as they get to see both parents every day. I'm back on speaking terms with my ex, but only about our children. If she asks me how I'm doing, I just redirect her and say, let's keep it to the kids. Now to answer a question I've gotten from many respondents here. Have I told anyone else about the conversation I had with Sammy where she told me mommy was napping with a window man? The answer is no, and I don't plan to. At least not anytime in the foreseeable future. I promised Sammy that was our secret and that it will remain. As for Sammy, I may end up telling her in 20 or 30 years, but for now I hope she has completely forgotten whatever she saw. She has never mentioned it to me again and seems as active and happy as ever. So I don't plan on discussing it with her again. That's the end of my story. Not a happy ending, but just about as good as you can get considering the circumstances. Dave, thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Until next time, I'll see you again. Hey folks, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all having a wonderful day or evening wherever you are. Today's story is about instant karma. Opie's wife is completely freaking out after she cheated on him and then got diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder that she needs medication for in order to save her life. In today's second story, Opie's wife had an affair with her college professor. Now, let's get into today's stories to find out what happened. My wife of 19 years told me about her friend setting her up on a blind date. She had a girls' night out with her friend T. T set her up, apparently with a guy that she had slept with a few weeks earlier. T was hooking up with someone else and set my wife up with the past hookup. My wife went out at 7 p.m. and came home around 3 in the morning. The confession came completely out of the blue. She said she was sorry and wanted to work on our marriage. There were waterworks and lots of begging for forgiveness. She said that nothing happened between her and the guy because T had slept with him. She knew agreeing to meet the guy was wrong and going to meet him was even worse. I didn't believe that nothing happened like she said. She also said that the guy works at a sawmill and you make more money. That's why I was the better option. Basically, she was confessing to actively trying to replace me. If she had found someone with a better paying job, this post would be much different. Not long after that girl's night out and before the confession, my wife and T had a total meltdown of their friendship. Suddenly, they went from best friends to T is a liar and a manipulative, jealous person, according to my wife. I think the confession or partial confession was to keep T from telling me about her sleeping with the guy, gaslighting me by telling me only partially about what really happened. Only enough to look bad, but not the whole ugly truth of what happened. Honestly, I didn't need to be told everything that happened. Her story didn't add up. The holes in the story were too big. Little coincidences that occurred around that time put everything in perfect focus. When she told me about it, I lost all feelings for her. I just went numb, didn't even get angry. I'm done. Just working on my exit strategy at this point. Getting financials in order, finding a place to move into, etc. It really sucks that she would be willing to throw away 19 years of marriage with no regard for anything, including our 2 children. Update. Sorry in advance. This is a long one. A lot has happened since my first post. She is in full-blown panic mode. Recently, she was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder where her white blood cells attack her lungs. This causes asthma attacks that normal medication can't correct. The only drug on the market that controls the condition has a copay of $13,000 after her Medicaid. If I didn't have really good health insurance through my employment, there wouldn't be any possibility of her being able to afford it. She has been trying everything to reconcile. She even set up couples counseling. We made it through 2.5 sessions. This explains why she came clean on partial truth and wanted to fix things. Counseling went the way I figured it would. Every session was all about everything I had done ever, including my working 50 hours each week to make ends meet, because she has partial disability and didn't work. I'm not saying that I'm perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Everything was brought up, including our 2 children. Well, except I was informed that the mention of her date night was off limits. About halfway through the 3rd session, the counselor looked her in the eye and asked, "If you have such a high-power radar to detect what everyone else is doing wrong, point that radar at yourself and tell me what you do wrong." The proverbial shit hit the fan. My soon-to-be ex-wife started yelling at the counselor and wanted to know why she was attacking her when we were there so she could fix me. After a few minutes of back and forth, my soon-to-be ex-wife stormed out crying. The counselor told me that my soon-to-be ex-wife had a deep hatred for me and that she didn't think this marriage could be salvaged. Basically, my response was, yep and nope. I informed the counselor that I appreciated her time and we wouldn't be back. She offered me individual counseling. I informed her that I probably would need it in the future and proceeded to tell her about the taboo topic. Needless to say, it didn't surprise her and confirmed my suspicion. Needless to say, the entire trip back to the house was about what a quack the therapist was. I've basically been on autopilot whenever I'm at the house. I refer to it as the house because it isn't a home anymore. I've moved into the spare bedroom. As far as I'm concerned, I may be married, but I no longer have a wife. If she didn't need good medical insurance coverage, she would still be on the hunt. I don't need to track down T to get the whole story. I live in a small community of less than 900 people. I commute to work in a bigger city daily. Monday of this week, while at the only grocery store in the community, guess who ran into my soon-to-be ex-wife? None other than the blind date guy. Small towns, right? It was bound to happen. I was at the end of the aisle when he walked up to her. He was a small guy, maybe 5'9" and 150 pounds. She had her back to me and didn't realize where I was. He asked her out again, right in front of me. She did decline though. That's when I walked up. I asked him if he was the guy she went out with about 2 months ago. He asked me what it was to me. I backed him up against the shelves and told him that I had been her husband for 19 years. I thought it was going to soil himself. I'm 6'2" and 250 pounds and muscular. She tried to get me to back off. I grounded her to shut up, that she just better listen. Immediately, she started crying. He told me that he was told she was single and begged for me not to kill him. I asked if they had sex. He swallowed hard and said yes. She cried harder. I told him to never let me see him again. He apologized for everything and basically ran out of the store. Her affair partner outed her by being in the wrong place at exactly the perfect time. If it hadn't been him, I would have eventually ran into tea to get the story. Needless to say, most of the time, I'm on autopilot. It's as if all emotion is gone. I have to fake happiness while I'm with my children. I don't know if it is an emotional self-defense mechanism to keep things from falling further apart. I know I should be in some kind of distress over this. One day, it's going to hit hard. I no longer trust the things I know to be true. Do my children really love me, or do they love the things I give them? Do my parents? Do they only love the fact that I got good grades in school? Never got into trouble? Always had good paying jobs? The only thing I'm certain of is I can't stay in this sham of a marriage. I get up, go to work, barely eat or sleep. The only people I've told about this are strangers on the internet. I have no one to talk to about this. I go from one day to the next pretending I'm normal. Maybe my soon-to-be ex-wife was right. The therapist does need to fix me. Opie, here are my thoughts on the situation. You need to go to a therapist for yourself. The process of divorce is going to get hard, and trust me, it will be helpful, even if asking for advice on how to minimize the impact on your children. You also need to seek a lawyer and focus on the best interest for your children. Let's see what the comments had to say about the situation. I'm stunned, said the therapist handled her like a pro. I'm sure she has seen plenty of women that do exactly what your wife did. It's very typical for a woman to blame the wreck of a marriage on the faults of her husband while acting like her shit doesn't stink. Their girlfriends buy it, so why wouldn't the female counselor buy it? And of course her actual cheating is understood to be something she's not talking about as a condition of going to therapy with you. In other words, she conspired with you to support her lying by omission while presumably walking in for help to make the marriage better. It's laughable and makes it crystal clear that your soon-to-be ex-wife is dishonest and not really about working on the marriage. The fact that the therapist let your soon-to-be ex-wife list the long laundry list of faults and then turned it back around on her was classic. And so was the soon-to-be ex-wife's stunned reaction, since it's a female therapist, that she presumes will be all-girl code. LOL. Her medical condition is irrelevant. Her bringing another man into the marriage is the salient point. She brought him in willingly and was excited about it. Her falling out with T was the only reason you ever found out at all. And her confession was trickle truth, which simply means she'll lie to your face just like she'll lie to a therapist's face. Worse, she absolutely trashed you with the therapist in front of you. Imagine what she says to her friends, family, and whomever else will listen to her garbage. Your soon-to-be ex-wife has little character and integrity and does not sound like someone that is actually reconciliation material. So don't offer it. Let her go. Now, let's get into today's second story. I married the love of my life a year ago. We've been together for over 10 years and recently decided to start trying for kids. However, after trying a bit, we decided to wait until after the new year. This is what happened to me. We both were off early by chance and arrived home at the same time. Since it was nice and early in the afternoon, we decided to go on a hike before dinner. But before, we figured a shower would be nice. She showered first, and when I got out of the shower, I found her still naked in the bed. We had passionate and good sex and didn't even make the run after all because of pillow talk. We had dinner, and afterwards, we sat on the couch next to each other, cozy with a blanket. She is a massive fan of some TV shows, which I don't care for, so I sat with a laptop and watched Netflix at the same time. While she was watching TV, she was texting her friends. We were often like that, but after the lovely afternoon, we were sitting extra close to each other. She didn't realize, however, that when my episode finished, I could easily see her mobile screen and see what she was typing. I saw my name in her text and that she was feeling so guilty that she couldn't remember the first time. But the second time was my fault. I got some grasps of information, but was not entirely sure what was up, but something was wrong. She locked her phone, and I closed my laptop at the same time. She froze up like a deer in headlights. I asked her if she wanted to tell me anything. I got up and walked out of the door. Normally, she wouldn't like that in an argument, but she didn't even move. A 15-minute walk and 3 cigarettes later, she still hadn't called or texted me, and because of this, I knew the shit was real. It was so unlike her. I walked back home, and she smiled at me as I came in. I turned towards the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of whiskey and another of the red wine bottles she was drinking, and walked back. She held up her wine glass, and I poured a good full glass, and did the same for my whiskey. The faint hope in her eyes disappeared when she realized that I really did know. She told the entire story. The first time was when we hosted a party together at our place, and I had to go to a family emergency and stay overnight. There was a new random friend that stayed late, even after everyone left. She was hammered and said she couldn't remember much except that it happened. The second time was the Tuesday night thereafter. She said she was confused about what happened and wanted to meet him at his place. She lied to me, saying she was going to meet another girlfriend that night and went off. And then it kind of happened again, and the fault was hers, because it was her decision to go there, which I didn't really get. After that, she broke it off and she was feeling terribly guilty. She didn't want me to leave and was terribly sorry, etc. The talk continued after that, but that is the gist. We spent the night apart, and I asked her to find another place for the night while I thought. That's this morning as I'm writing this. Oh man, for all the people still reading all of this, I'm sorry for the wall of text. I think this is just some therapeutic writing for me. Do with it what you want. I just had to get it off my chest. I'm going to take my time thinking on what to do and see it from there. Opie, your wife obviously has no respect for you. Do you honestly believe her sob story? You need to file for divorce immediately so you can get out of this relationship. You can also try to record everything she's saying. It will make things a lot easier for you in court. I wish you the best of luck with your situation. Thanks for taking the time to listen to today's stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and comment below on what your thoughts are on today's stories. If there's a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me.